What drives your life? What drives your life? Rick Warren, in his latest book, What on Earth Am I Here For?, is a chapter to that. What drives your life? Most people's lives are driven by a number of things, and he lists 5. One is resentment and anger. The lives of many people are driven by the resentment and disagreement over previous things in their life, over their past. They can't get beyond it. They either blame someone, a parent, a sibling, a spouse, a worker, someone for something that happened in their life. And their lives are driven by this. Their future is determined by the anger and resentment from the past. The second thing that drives many people's lives is guilt. If they're not blaming someone else for their past problems, they blame themselves. And that also determines many people's future, because they continually blame themselves for something that went on in the past. It drives their life. The third thing is materialism. Keeping up with the Joneses. The newest iPad, the newest car, the newest TV, the newest iBox, whatever. Bigger house, new cottage. We are driven by materialism, and it is suffering many people to be so far in debt and so far beyond their means that they'll never get out, and it drives their life. The fourth thing is trying to appease others, trying to win someone else's approval. Many people try to win the approval of their parents, of their spouse, of their co-workers, in an effort to drive their own lives. If they don't feel the approval, they don't feel like they're getting anywhere. It's a motivation that drives them, and in many cases it drives them to ruination. And of course the fifth thing is fear. Fear drives many people's lives and hinders many people because they're afraid. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them in the life or in death. In the book of Job, we all know about the suffering of Job. Now, Job was a man who had everything. The Bible says that he was a man in the land of Oz who had wealth, he had property, he had animals, he had children, he had everything a person could want. He was called the greatest man in the East. Yet Satan conjured up a way to test Job. And we all know the story that over the course of a short period of time, Job lost everything. Everything except his wife and some of his friends. He lost his wealth, he lost his land, he lost his animals, he even lost his own health. And the book of Job tells about his railings with God, his conversation with God, his attempts to find out why God allowed this to happen to him. Most of the book of Job is taken up with that and with the so-called comfort of his friends, Job's comforters, who pleaded with him to admit how sinful he must have been to ensure God's wrath to this degree. And Job's wife, who pleaded with him to get angry and to curse God. Job did not. We've all talked about Job from the point of his suffering, but I want to point out the things that did not drive Job's life. Yes, he got angry. He got angry with God. He got angry with the situation. He got angry in a way that we all would get angry. But it did not drive his life. He had some fear. When all these things happen to you in a short period of time, you wonder what's going to happen next. You get fearful. But it didn't drive his life. His friends tried to tell him how bad he must have been to make him feel guilty. But Job refused that because he felt he was totally upright. He did not take the guilt they tried to impart upon him onto himself. He did not let the feeling of guilt drive his life. Anger, resentment, yes, I'm sure he had plenty. You don't lose everything you have without having some degree of resentment, some degree of questioning, some degree of disappointment. But in the run of things, it did not let him. It did not drive his life. Job's biggest question was the question that everybody asks. I'm good. I live a good life. Why is God doing this to me? You hear people ask that all the time. And it says in the Bible that Job was a fully righteous and upright man. He was a man who despised evil. He did good. He was blameless and upright, at least in his own mind anyway. But in chapter 33, his friend Elihu says this, look, in this you are not righteous. I will answer you, for God is greater than man. Why do you contend with him? For he does not grow in accounting of any of his works. For God may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. He says that Job was not as righteous as he thought, because he should not be contending with God. And in fact, it tells us in Romans that no man is righteous. No, not one. Therefore, bad things don't happen to good people, because in God's sight there are no good people. We are all sinners, every one of us. The second thing is why Job 2? Because of where he was, because of who he was, or because of how he was. Job is mentioned as an individual in the book. He's not associated with any group. He's all by himself. It says in Peter that Satan goes about like a roaring lion, devouring those that he can. If you ever watched lions, they stalk the loners. They stalk the ones who are separated from the herd. They stalk the stragglers who are left behind. That's why it says in Hebrews, do not neglect the coming of yourself together, because as a group, there's unity. When you leave, when you go out, yes, you can be a Christian by yourself, but you're more vulnerable in so doing. Job only developed his real sense of achievement and regained everything that he lost when he ultimately admitted that God was sovereign. The world we're in right now, as Peter said earlier, is in a mess. And I think that Job is probably an allegory of what is going on in the world. Satan is tempting and is destroying and is involved in everything with God's permission, because all of us are not putting him first. is in a mess, just as Job was in a mess. Job lost everything except his life. The world is losing a lot in the past number of years. Perhaps we have to do what Job did, admit fully that God is in control. You see, the sixth thing that drives your life should be God.
Yes.
And if God drives your life, it does 3 or 4 things. First of all, it gives you focus. It gives you focus on one thing by which to determine what your life's struggles, events, plans are to be. It simplifies your life because you're not running after all the things that the world offers to the same extent.
Yes.
And it gives you purpose. George Bernard Shaw, who was an atheist, by the way, wrote this: "This is the true joy of life, the being used up for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clot of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy." One of the greatest people of this generation or this past century was Mother Teresa. She gave her life focused on one thing. And the greatest of selfless lives has led to the highest of awards and admiration. Only by putting God first can we live the purpose life that we were meant to live. And only then will we probably thwart Satan's advances. Something to think about.